They want your attention. They crave it. They feed on it like oxygen, like fuel, like the only thing that makes them matter. The moment you respond, even with silence laced in resentment, they win. Because the game is not about truth. It's not about right or wrong. It's about control. The people who try to manipulate you, provoke you, insult you, guilt-trip you, gaslight you, they all want one thing: to own your emotional world. And what they can't stand, what breaks them, is when you no longer give them access to it. Ignoring them isn't weakness. It's dominance. It's restraint. It's the discipline to not let chaos into your peace. You think by responding, you'll set the record straight? That you'll defend your name, correct the lie, prove your worth? No. You just gave them what they wanted: relevance. Every word you speak to someone committed to misunderstanding you is a donation of your energy to the wrong place. You can't build an empire if you're busy fighting in alleyways. And that's exactly where they want to drag you, down to their level, into their frequency, where they have home court advantage. But when you ignore them, you change the rules. You change the field. You don't show up to the battle. And now they're swinging at air. They don't know what to do with your silence. It's not what they rehearsed for. They rehearsed for a reaction, for drama, for fireworks. But all they get is stillness, nothing. And in that void, they start to crumble. They start to obsess. Because nothing is louder than silence when someone's addicted to noise. They'll say you're heartless. They'll say you're cold. They'll try to shame you back into the cycle. But let them. Let them scream into the emptiness you left behind. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them explanations. You don't owe anyone access to a healed, evolved, emotionally grounded version of you if all they ever did was abuse the broken one. You've worked too hard to get here, to be calm, clear, focused. You've crawled through darkness they'll never understand. And now your peace is not up for negotiation. Ignoring them is not avoidance. It's alignment. It's choosing your sanity over their dysfunction. It's choosing your future over their bait. It's choosing to pour energy into your vision, your growth, your values, not their drama. Every time you don't respond, you rewire your nervous system. You teach yourself, not everything deserves a reaction. You step out of the trauma loop. You stop reliving stories that don't serve you. You let the past rot where it belongs, behind you. And yes, it's hard, because you've been trained to fight back, conditioned to prove yourself, programmed to seek justice. But real power doesn't chase justice. It becomes it. By living well, by moving on, by rising without a sound. The ones who try to provoke you aren't worth the breath. You think your response will change them? Wake them up? Inspire them to reflect? No. They'll twist your words, drain your energy, and leave you questioning your worth all over again. And they'll enjoy it. Because it's not about the conversation. It's about the control. The high they get from knowing they still have access to your mind. Don't give it to them. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing they still get to live rent-free in your thoughts. You are no longer a home for people who destroy peace. You are a fortress, and ignoring them is how you guard your gates. You don't need to announce your boundaries. You don't need to explain your silence. You just need to live it. Let your absence speak. Let your indifference echo. Because when someone who used to trigger you no longer gets a response, that's transformation. That's power. That's the ultimate flex. Peace so unshakable it can't be manipulated. And yes, they'll try harder. They'll bait you. They'll insult you more viciously. They'll send flying monkeys, fake accounts, mutual friends, anything to pull you back in. But you don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't explain. You've evolved. You see the trap now. You know the pattern. And you're not stepping into that ring again. Because your energy is too precious. Your future is too important. Your mission is too real. You're not here to entertain drama. You're here to build legacies. And legacies aren't built in comment sections. They're built in silence, in discipline, in moments where you choose to walk away rather than explode. That's not weakness. That's mastery. And most people will never understand it because they've never been in control of their own reactions. But you're different now. You see through the noise. You've stopped taking the bait. You've stopped needing to be right. You've stopped needing to win arguments with people who've already lost your respect. That's freedom. That's what ignoring them gives you. Distance, clarity, leverage. It gives you your life back. And when you fully understand that, when you feel the power of not needing to respond, you become untouchable. Not because they stopped trying, but because you stopped letting them matter. They don't want a conversation. They want control. And the fastest way to give it to them is to react. React with anger. React with hurt. React with desperation. Because the second you react, they own you. You just stepped into their frame. You just entered their game. And in that game, they decide the rules. You're no longer speaking your truth. You're defending yourself in their arena. That's why silence is so terrifying to manipulators. It removes their power source. You become unreadable, unpredictable, and that's dangerous because people can't manipulate what they can't predict. The moment you stop reacting, they no longer know where to press. They try all the old buttons and nothing happens. You're just still, unshaken, focused, and that stillness feels like rejection to them because it is. It's rejection of the old game, the old script, the old toxicity. You're not playing anymore. You've unplugged from the performance, and now you're untouchable. Think about it. How many times have you wasted energy reacting to people who weren't even listening? People who weren't trying to understand you, but trying to provoke you? People who didn't want peace, they wanted chaos dressed up as discussion? You've spent years reacting. And where did it get you? Drained, frustrated, off track. Their chaos became your identity. Their drama became your focus. Their voice got louder than your own. But not anymore. Not now. Now you understand that power isn't loud, it's controlled. Power is the ability to stay calm when everything around you is baiting your reaction. Power is the restraint to not explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Power is silence that shakes the room because it's coming from a place of clarity. Because it's not passive. It's calculated, strategic, conscious. When you go silent, you're not running. You're rising. You're not hiding. You're healing. You're not avoiding the problem. You're choosing not to feed it. Because here's the truth. Most conflicts don't need resolution. They need your absence. They don't need your truth. They need your silence. You're not here to be emotionally available to everyone. Not everyone deserves that access. Your reactions are currency. Stop giving them away for free. Every reaction costs energy, time, and emotional clarity. And if someone has shown you over and over again that they don't value that gift, stop offering it. Let them feel your absence. Let them feel the consequences of burning a bridge with someone who used to care. That's the power of silence. It teaches lessons that words never could. When you react, you tell them, I'm still affected. When you stay calm, you show them, you no longer have power here. You want to become emotionally dangerous? Master stillness. Master the pause. Master the ability to say nothing and let people wrestle with their own noise. Because the truth is, people hate silence when it comes from someone who used to react. They feel exposed, powerless, unsettled. Because for once, they're stuck with themselves, with their own guilt, their own confusion, their own games, and no more fuel from you to keep the fire going. That's where your power lives, in the refusal to react. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not distant. You're disciplined. You're not emotionless. You're emotionally intelligent. And emotional intelligence means knowing when silence speaks louder than any defense ever could. You've realized this isn't about being right. It's about being free. Free from loops. Free from trauma scripts. Free from the addiction to proving yourself to people who only value you when you're broken and reactive. They don't know how to handle healed. They don't know how to handle peace. They don't know how to handle unavailable. And that's not your problem. You're not here to babysit people's insecurities. You're not here to keep reacting so they feel important. You've graduated. And silence is your diploma. It says, I'm no longer in this classroom. I've moved on. Let them shout. Let them guess. Let them spiral in confusion. You've got bigger things to do, and none of them require their opinion. This is what power looks like: emotional independence. You don't need their validation. You don't need their apology. You don't even need them to understand. You just need space. Space to build, space to heal, space to grow without the noise. And when you stop reacting, you get that space back. You reclaim your inner world. That's the real prize, because you can't create your future if you're constantly reacting to your past. You can't become the version of you that's focused, unstoppable, laser sharp, if you're still emotionally invested in people who drain you. So today, you make the shift. You stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop reacting. And you start choosing peace on purpose. You start holding your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You start letting silence speak for you, because it never lies. And most of all, you start understanding that the less you react, the more powerful you become. That's not theory. That's fact. That's the energy of someone who finally understands. Not everything deserves access to your nervous system. Not every voice deserves an answer. And not every battle is worth fighting, especially when you've already won by walking away. Closure is a myth. Closure is the lie we tell ourselves to delay the healing we already know we need to do. You think if you just had one more conversation, one more explanation, one more apology, one more honest moment, that you'd finally move on. But the truth is, you don't need closure. You need clarity. You don't need them to validate your pain, to own their role, to meet you in maturity. You need to wake up to the reality they've already shown you. Closure assumes they have the capacity to give you truth. Clarity shows you they never did, and maybe that's the hardest part. Realizing that the person you wanted closure from is the same person who created the chaos you're trying to understand. They were never going to clean it up. They were never going to sit down and unpack the pain with you. They were never going to meet you in the middle, because they liked the power imbalance. They liked you confused. They liked you doubting. And they liked knowing that a part of you was still waiting. For closure, for answers, for peace they were never going to give. But that ends now. Because you're not waiting anymore. You're not waiting for them to grow up. You're not waiting for them to apologize. You're not waiting for a goodbye that's wrapped in clarity and kindness. You're giving yourself permission to move forward without any of that. You're choosing clarity over closure. And here's the truth about clarity. It doesn't always come with comfort. It comes with truth. Sharp, raw, undeniable truth. The kind that says, this is who they are. This is how they showed up. This is what they did. And this is what I now choose to do with it. It's not easy, but it's liberating. Because clarity gives you the power to walk away without second-guessing yourself. To stop replaying conversations that never happened. To stop trying to read between the lines of silence. To stop hoping that maybe they'll circle back with maturity. They won't. And you don't need them to. Because the version of you that needed closure was still trying to make sense of dysfunction. The version of you now, you see it clearly. You see the patterns. You see the gaslighting. You see the inconsistency. You see the manipulation. You see the way they dangled love and pulled it back the moment you needed it most. And now, you choose to stop analyzing, stop romanticizing, stop re-engaging, and start releasing. This is your freedom, not when they come back and explain, but when you stop needing them to. When you look at the mess they left and say, I don't need your help cleaning it up. I've got this now. That's power. That's maturity. That's you reclaiming the narrative. Because healing is not about fixing the story with them. It's about rewriting the story with yourself. You don't need their words. You need your own decisions. You don't need their version. You need your truth. And your truth is this. They showed you who they were. Believe it. And move on. They fumbled you. Believe it, and move on. They never respected your heart. Believe it, and move on. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with clarity. The kind that sharpens your boundaries, that protects your peace, that makes you immune to the same pattern showing up in a different face. Because once you have clarity, you don't chase confusion anymore. You don't romanticize chaos. You don't miss people who made you question your worth. You miss the idea, not the reality, the fantasy, not the facts. And clarity brings you back to the facts. Fast. It's not about making them the villain. It's about realizing they were never the hero. And maybe that hurts, but it also heals. Because for the first time, you stop looking for closure and start choosing yourself. You stop waiting for the past to come full circle and start creating a new future. You stop hoping they'll come back better and start becoming the better version of yourself they never deserved. That's what this is about. That's the shift. From waiting to walking, from obsessing to observing, from reacting to reclaiming. And the best part? Once you stop needing closure, you become untouchable. No one can trap you in emotional loops anymore. No one can bait you with confusion. No one can dangle false hope and expect you to jump. You see through the act. You see through the words. You see through the timing. And you choose peace, not proof. You choose forward, not full circle. You choose power, not patterns. So if you're still waiting for closure, stop. Give yourself the clarity you've been begging them for. Look at the evidence. Look at the actions. Look at the way they treated you when it mattered most. That's your answer. It's not complicated, it's just painful. But pain becomes power when you stop resisting it, when you sit with it, when you let it teach you what they never could, that you were always worth consistency, that you were always worth honesty, that you were always worth respect. And anyone who made you feel otherwise doesn't get a seat in your future. Closure is optional. Clarity is essential. Choose wisely. They told you to fight. They told you to argue. They told you to defend, explain, prove, beg, plead. And you did. For years, you stayed locked in a loop of reaction, connection, justification. You kept showing up to battles that drained you, defending your heart to people who had already decided not to value it. You kept answering texts, responding to jabs, clearing up lies, offering explanations to the ones who twisted every word anyway. And for what? To feel exhausted? To feel seen by someone committed to misunderstanding you? To keep a bond that only exists through chaos? That's not power. That's emotional slavery. And now you see it. Now you know. The real move is not to fight harder, it's to disappear smarter. You don't win by overpowering their noise, you win by starving it. You win by withdrawing your attention, your reaction, your emotional energy. That's the art of strategic distance, the kind of move that isn't loud but lethal. Because here's the secret. You can't control toxic people, but you can control access. You can't change them, but you can change how close they stand to your peace. And once you realize that distance is a decision, you stop negotiating with dysfunction. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop apologizing for needing space. You start building a life where your nervous system feels safe, not constantly attacked. And yes, at first they'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll throw guilt like confetti, but they're not mad because you hurt them. They're mad because they lost control. You see, control doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like concern, like fake check-ins, like, why are you being distant? Why don't you talk to me anymore? We used to be close. But the closeness they miss was never mutual. It was one-sided, draining, demanding. What they miss is the version of you who gave unlimited access to someone who gave nothing back. They miss the emotional credit card you canceled, and when you disengage, you force them to face the bankruptcy of their own behavior. That's why distance works, because silence doesn't just say, I'm done. It says, I've leveled up. You're no longer in emotional kindergarten, playing with people who throw tantrums when they don't get their way. You've graduated. You're building peace like it's your full-time job. And guess what? It is. Protecting your peace is your job. Guarding your energy is your job. Creating space where you can breathe, think, grow, that's your responsibility. And no one else is going to do it for you, especially not the ones who benefit from your burnout. That's why disengaging is so powerful, because it's proactive. You're not waiting for them to hurt you again. You're not waiting for the chaos to start. You're creating space before it ever arrives. That's dominance. That's foresight. That's emotional intelligence at its finest. And it's not about hating them. It's not about punishing them. It's about loving yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to heal. It's about stepping off the battlefield and realizing you don't need to win, because you've already walked away. That's the new energy, calm, clear, unavailable for nonsense. You're not mad, you're just done. You're not bitter, you're just better. You're not avoiding, you're evolving. And evolution always requires elevation. Higher ground, strategic distance, air to breathe, space to think. Because when you're too close to the storm, you think the chaos is normal. You think being constantly triggered is just life. But the moment you step back, you realize peace was always an option. It just required space. And that's what you've chosen. To disengage, to detach, to disappear from dynamics that no longer serve you. They don't have access. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. You're clear about who you are, about what you need, about what you will and will not tolerate. And clarity is the greatest flex of all. People may not like your distance, but they'll learn to respect it, because once you show them that access to you is a privilege, not a right, the whole dynamic shifts. You go from being reactive to untouchable. You go from being emotional prey to emotional power. And not because you yelled louder, but because you stepped back, stood tall, and stopped playing their game. That's how you dominate. You don't fight chaos. You rise above it. You don't battle toxicity. You outgrow it. You don't chase closure. You choose clarity. And you don't lose yourself trying to prove your worth to people too blind to see it. You reclaim that worth in silence, in distance, in deliberate detachment. You've given too much of yourself to people who never deserved it. Now it's time to give that energy back to you. Pull it inward, fuel your goals, fuel your focus, fuel your freedom. You don't need to say a word, your absence will speak volumes. The most underrated move you'll ever make is going silent. Not as revenge, not as a tantrum, not as a manipulative trick, but as a declaration. I'm no longer available for nonsense. I'm no longer a participant in conversations that don't lead anywhere. I'm no longer the audience for emotional performances. I'm no longer answering to chaos. Because silence isn't weakness. It's strength. It's restraint. It's emotional discipline. It's the ability to say, I don't need to react to prove anything. I don't need to respond to feel powerful. I don't need to explain myself to someone committed to misunderstanding me. And here's what happens the moment you stop responding. The mirror turns around. You stop carrying their mess. You stop being the emotional dumpster. You stop absorbing their projections. And for the first time, they're forced to sit with themselves. No one to argue with. No one to blame. No one to trigger. Just them and their own reflection. That's the uncomfortable truth they never wanted to face, because as long as you responded, you gave them an escape, a distraction, an external focus. But when you go quiet, that noise they use to avoid their own emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly, they have to deal with the silence. Suddenly, they have to confront the reality that they no longer control your attention. That's when reflection begins. But not because they wanted to grow. Because they have no other choice. Because the energy source they fed off is gone. And listen, that's not your problem. You're not responsible for their growth. You're not their therapist. You're not their emotional rehab. You're not obligated to sit and wait while they sort themselves out. You've done enough. You gave chances. You explained. You stayed when it was hard. You offered grace after grace. And now you owe yourself silence. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the dignity of being done. Because when you stop responding, you stop the cycle. You break the loop. You close the door that they kept open just enough to sneak back in when it suited them. And yes, they'll notice. They always do. Don't let them fool you. That silence, it's deafening to someone who is used to controlling your emotions. They'll start poking, sending vague messages, thinking about you. Hope you're okay. We should talk. Don't fall for it. That's not growth. That's panic. That's them realizing the leash they thought they had on you is broken. And it's not your job to put it back on. You're not a pet. You're not a puppet. You're a person reclaiming your power. A person who finally realized that peace is louder than any argument. A person who finally understood that silence says what words never could. I'm free. I'm over it. I've moved on. Let them reflect. Let them wonder. Let them spiral. That's their journey now, not yours. Your silence is not a punishment. It's a boundary. It's you stepping into your higher self. It's you saying, I no longer play games that cost me my mental health. And the beautiful part? The more you stay silent, the more clarity you gain. You start hearing your own voice again. You start trusting your own intuition. You start realizing how loud the noise was and how good life feels without it. You reclaim energy. You reclaim focus. You reclaim time. And most importantly, you reclaim yourself. That's the power of not responding. That's the beauty of letting silence speak for you. And in that stillness, you grow, you rise, you evolve, you become unreachable to the drama you used to dance with. Because the version of you that used to reply, used to chase, used to need answers, that version no longer exists. You buried it in the silence. And what's emerging now is someone unshakable. Someone who doesn't need closure because they created their own. Someone who doesn't need validation because they've built self-respect. Someone who doesn't react to chaos because they've mastered peace. That's real power, not in shouting, but in silence, not in clapping back, but in cutting access, not in proving, but in protecting. And if they ever reach out, hoping you'll break the silence, remember what it cost you to finally stop talking. Remember the nights you couldn't sleep. The way your chest tightened every time your phone lit up. The way you kept justifying, kept hoping, kept bleeding. Don't go back to that version. Don't answer for the sake of being nice. Silence isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And it's your right. You're not cold, you're healing, you're not bitter, you're awake, you're not closed off, you're selective. Because now you know the truth. Not everyone deserves your response. Not everyone is worthy of your reaction. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your voice, and those who once took it for granted can sit in the silence they created. Let them reflect. You used to think power meant control, loud words, strong comebacks, always winning the argument, always proving your point. You used to think the person who spoke last had the upper hand, but now you know better. Real power doesn't need noise. Real power doesn't seek attention. Real power isn't interested in theatrics. It's not about the last word. It's about the last reaction. True power is peace. The kind of peace that comes when you no longer feel the urge to prove, to chase, to defend, or to explain. That's the kind of revenge they never see coming. Because when someone expects war and you give them silence, it breaks them. When someone throws bait and you don't bite, it rattles them. When they try to push your buttons and you don't even blink, it confuses them. That's what peace does. It terrifies people who feed on chaos. They wanted you emotional. They wanted you reactive. They wanted you trapped in the loop of conflict and control. Because as long as you were fighting, you were still tied to them. As long as you were angry, they still had influence. But peace? Peace cuts the cord. Peace says, I don't care how you feel about me. I care how I feel when I'm around you. Peace says, I don't need closure from you. I gave it to myself. Peace says, I didn't change for you. I evolved without you. And that's the kind of transformation that can't be undone. Because now, you're calm in storms that used to destroy you. You're silent in rooms that used to shake you. You're clear in situations that used to confuse you. You're light years ahead of the person who once begged for validation. And here's the irony. The moment you no longer need revenge is when you've already won. The moment you no longer need them to suffer, to regret, to miss you, is the moment they actually start to. But that's not your business anymore. Your peace is too expensive to be spent on people who didn't value your presence. You're done playing savior. You're done playing victim. You're done playing anything. Now you just live. You move. You rise. Quietly. Powerfully. And when they finally realize what they lost, they'll look for signs of your pain. They'll search for evidence that you're hurting, that you're still waiting, still watching, still hoping. But all they'll find is distance, grace, silence, and peace. That's what breaks them. Not your tears, not your rage, your peace. Because peace means they no longer have a role in your story. Peace means they can't reach you where you've grown. Peace means you finally understood. Not everything that hurts deserves your energy. Not everyone who leaves deserves your attention. Not everything broken needs to be fixed, especially not by you. You're not here to carry the weight of people who refuse to change. You're not here to explain your worth to those who made it their job to ignore it. You're not here to relive chapters that almost destroyed you. You're here to write new ones, from a new place, with new energy. And in this new chapter, peace is the main character. Not drama, not conflict, not revenge, peace. Because peace is quiet, but it speaks volumes. Peace doesn't shout, it radiates. Peace doesn't chase, it attracts. Peace doesn't fight, it flows. And when you have it, truly have it, you stop chasing closure. You stop begging for apologies. You stop needing the people who broke you to be the ones who fix you. You fix yourself. You build yourself. You create a life so full, so rich, so deeply grounded in peace that their chaos can't touch it. That's the highest revenge, not success, not fame, not status, but peace. Peace that doesn't shake, peace that doesn't shrink, peace that doesn't flinch when the past comes knocking. Because now you don't open doors for old pain. You don't offer seats at your table to people who once starved your soul. You don't allow noise into spaces you've cleaned with your healing. You are unavailable, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. You are no longer living in reaction to what they do. You're living in response to what you've become. And what you've become is untouchable. Not because you built walls, but because you built wisdom. Not because you're hard, but because you're healed. Not because you stopped caring, but because you care deeper now. Just not about the same things. That's what peace does. It redefines you. It realigns you. It reminds you that your greatest weapon is not your scream. It's your stillness. Not your rage, but your refusal to break. Not your fists, but your freedom. And freedom, real freedom, only comes when you stop giving energy to people who drain it. When you stop arguing with the unworthy. When you stop letting pain become identity. So let them wonder. Let them watch. Let them whisper. You don't owe them a show. You owe yourself peace. And the final revenge is living so free, so steady, so rooted in your own calm, that their chaos no longer even reaches your world. You don't destroy them. You erase them by building a life where they no longer exist.